In game theory, there are two types of games, finite and infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed upon objective, like baseball. We all agree to the rules. We all agree that whoever has more runs at the end of 9 innings is the winner, and the game ends and we all go home. Nobody ever says, if we can just play 3 more innings, I know we can come back from this deficit. It doesn't happen that way. An infinite game is defined as known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the objective is to keep the game in play, to perpetuate the game. When you pit a finite player versus a finite player, the system is stable. Baseball is stable. When you pit an infinite player versus an infinite player, the system is also stable. Like the Cold War was stable because there cannot be a winner and there cannot be a loser, so we just try and keep the game in play. And in infinite games, because there are no winners and losers, what happens is players drop out of the game when they run out of the will or the resources to continue to play, right? So technically, the United States didn't win the Cold War. The Soviets dropped out because they ran out of the resources of the will to continue to play. So this gets me thinking. Let's look at business. The game of business is an infinite game, right? It obeys all the rules. There are known and unknown players. You don't know all the competitors necessarily in one industry to another. The rules are changeable. We haven't all agreed what the rules are. And there is no winning the game of business, right? The game just perpetuates. In fact, the game of business has existed longer than every single company on the planet today, and it will outlast every single company on the planet today. If you look at the Dow Index of 30-something odd companies that make up the Dow Index, something like 70 or 80% of those companies are 35 years or younger, right? So it gets me thinking, if you listen to the language that companies use, they don't know what game they're in. They talk about being number one. They talk about beating their competition based on what agreed upon criteria, based on what agreed upon time frame. Is it market share? Is it profits? Is it revenues? Square footage, number of employees? Over what? 1 month, 5 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, the life of the company? I haven't agreed to those rules. And so companies can arbitrarily declare themselves number one in anything they want if they set the standards and the time frames. And the only reason we do these things on an annualized basis is we tend to compare ourselves to other organizations annually is only because we pay taxes annually. If we paid taxes every 18 months, that would be sort of the standard. But again, we still haven't agreed what the metrics are to be number one. That means the companies that are playing the infinite game are playing against most of the others who are playing the finite game, means those finite companies find themselves in quagmire. So it begs the question, how does one play the infinite game? How does one build an organization constructed for the infinite game? So up here, you have the infinite game. This is where the why exists. So I talk about the why, the purpose, cause, or belief about the organization. This is where our values lie. These are never changing. They are permanent. They will outlast all of us, and they should outlast, they've been here from the birth of the company, and they should last the length of the company, right? The infinite stuff, the why stuff and the value stuff, is inherently intangible, and it's inherently difficult to measure, right? Now down here, you have the finite game. And this is where our interests lie. This is where what I would call your what's lie, right? This is where our products lie and things like that. It is inherently tangible and inherently very easy to measure. Now, the goal is to run all decisions through our values, through our purpose or cause first, and then through our interests. So what is a values-based decision? What does that even look like? So here's a values-based decision. When our military goes into battle and we shoot a bad guy, we will take their injured body, we will send our medics onto the battlefield to rescue the injured body of our enemy. We will put them on our helicopters, fly them to our hospitals, put them in our hospital beds. Our doctors will use our medicine to nurse them back to health. That is not in our interest. However, that's kind of who we are, right? It's what defines us. In other words, we're wasting our resources because our values are more important than saving those resources, doing something purely in our interests. So great organizations are making values-based decisions all the time, and then our interests come into play. But the problem is when you're playing a finite, these things get ignored. And every time we make a decision, we decide what we do in a vacuum. So your competitor comes out with a new product. How do we react? Quickly, come out with something similar. What's going on with the marketplace? You make some other reaction. What's going on in this particular country? And every single decision we make in a vacuum seems perfectly good. We're making rational decisions based on our interests, right? The problem is when we pull back and look at all of the decisions, all the people we've hired, this is what happens when you only hire people based on their resumes, for example. Smart guy, get that person on board, right? When you pull back, your culture's a mess and nobody knows what you stand for. The whole idea of making values-based decisions is we can look at almost all of the decisions. Every now and then one can go sideways, but we look at all of the decisions, the people you hire, the things you do, the things you believe in, the things you stand for, everything tangible, and we can say of you or your organization, I know what you stand for. I believe what you believe. I would like to be a part of your organization. I would like to buy from your organization. This is where loyalty lies. Ideally, what we do is we run all decisions through our values first. And though it may not always go our way, just like I said, we make decisions all the time that aren't always in our interests, like bringing an injured bad guy and putting him in our hospitals. Not in our interests. But what that does is it makes us predictable. And it makes our allies trust us because they know what we stand for, and they will either stand with us or they'll stand against us. And together, we will go through the infinite contest for as long as it takes. This is what we're in right now. The Cold War is alive and well, and we will not help contribute to stabilizing the world until we start playing the game we're in rather than playing the game we're not in. Thank you very much.